I will also drop the link to the agenda into the channel. Give me a moment for that, but you can go ahead while I'm doing that.
All right. So under announcements, we have a reminder that our new meeting cadence is the first and third Thursday. So this would be the first Thursday of March, and then we will be meeting again on the 21st. So looking forward to see everybody again on that day. Let's see. Update from Alyssa from engineering.
No worries. Oh, one other quick announcement, which is that SALT 3007 was released yesterday. So that was a painful release, but we're good. We had some docs problems, and it looks like the docs problems are still occurring, but we'll fix those problems. So yeah, okay, so let me give an update. So after our last meeting, so I must say that in our SALT extensions meetings, I come away from it feeling like, wow, this is a really big change that we're introducing into the system. And because it's such a large change, there's inevitably going to be some impacts. And after our last meeting, I felt like, shall we say, sobered, to the point where I was like, you know what, let's get some of the engineers and professional services people at Broadcom taking a look at this as well. So I kind of I talked to a couple of key stakeholders and organized kind of a meeting to talk with people who are experts on SALT inside of the meeting. And I wanted to just let you know kind of what came out of those discussions. So I don't exactly know the timeline for when 3008 is going to release. It might be, I don't know, 3 months away. I don't know exactly know what the timeline is for that. I don't think it's been defined or set yet or planned. But when we're getting a little bit closer to the 3008 release, we've got a plan to maybe kind of have, we've got some agreement to maybe have like a ideally long RC cycle, since this is going to be just such a big change to SALT. And we're hoping that during that RC cycle, we'll get support from this group to do some testing, but we're also going to double down and really dig in and do some deep testing into the RC on the Broadcom side as well, to just kind of really understand what are the impacts, how can we ensure that we have a happy path to installation, which I know we all care about the installation piece, which is going to be complicated when it comes to this new change. Thinking through other things related to documentation or other things like that. So I just wanted to let you know that the engineering team and the professional services team and the customer support team on the Broadcom side is going to join and help support that 3008 release testing period to catch anything. And I think the way that this group can help that is we can do some early looking into and thinking about some of those early problems, but even before it gets to the RC period, and we can, you know, surface any kind of issues or problems that we're seeing on our end and share that with the people who are going to be doing some intense testing during the RC period on the Broadcom side. So that is my update. Any comments or questions or discussions related to that? Anything you want me to pass on? Yeah, go ahead, Max.
Would it be possible to have a like pre-announcement before the code freeze period? So people can get like their pull request merged before the release candidate is out.
Yeah. What do you think, Murphy and Shane? Reasonable? What do you think?
Like through SALT announce mailing list or something like that, so people can have some time to.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think if we put a stake in the ground now for 3008, it will get shifted given bugs and features and how the team is now limited. Fortunately, we still managed to keep Pedro on the team, even though he's going to be working remotely through Portugal, which has been a great asset to have Pedro stay. I think management understood they cut too deep. So, but with the limited number of team cut in half, it's going to be, we said July, I'm betting it'll be more like September. You know, the way things crash into the wall, that'll get things shifted out a bit. But having the code freeze early and pre-announced we're going to be closing it in a month's time, 2 weeks' time would be a great idea, Max.
Yeah, that's always something that when I've had work that I'm trying to fit into a release, right? That's always something that I bring up in like every open hour. Like, hey, when is this gonna happen? When is this gonna happen? So having something that's, you know, out there broader to the community as an announcement saying like, hey, I think we're getting close to the freeze. Hey, the freeze is gonna happen in X number of weeks. Hey, the freeze is upon us. Would be really helpful to folks.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot. Good stuff. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I can give 3007 as an example. We would have liked to have released it a few weeks back, but things got in the way, so to speak, because a handful of people, and hence it was like a few weeks later than we would have originally wanted. So I think the same will probably happen with 3008. So I'm hopeful that we get loads of time for code freeze. With the GitHub actions that we have now, it's pretty quick and easy to actually get a release out. So it's more important than ever that we announce when we're going to code freeze. And once the freeze occurs, it's going to be pretty close to the release date as such.
We've had freeze dates in the past, but I don't remember us making them public. And since we've been trimmed down so small, I don't remember having a freeze date.
Yeah.
we kind of close it when the last thing we want in is merged, then we tag, you know. So
what would be like, Max, I'm curious, like how much of a little window pre-announcement, like there's ideal and then there's like, you know, minimum viable. Do you have like a window of time that would be ideal versus, you know, at least this much time?
I think a couple of weeks will be sufficient.
Okay.
Because I've seen a couple of times when people rush to get their pull request merged in and it's too late. And then they start begging, can I get my pull request into the code frozen branch? And it's too late and it's have to wait for another major release.
Yeah.
I think a month heads up should be enough time for people to get it in. With that 2 weeks away, kind of, that gives them where they're not going to rush to get something in and have it be not a fully complete solution.
Good stuff. Okay. I think
it
that's
might
it
help
for
us to have some better planning with a freeze date.
Sure.
Yeah, we could take that back to the team to talk about. That would be nice for everybody, I feel like, but yeah. Okay, good stuff. Unless there's anything else to say on that topic, back to you, Nick.
All right. So I wanted to really quickly say that there was an update on the salt pip issue that was seen, where you couldn't install more than one extension essentially at a time, and it was an upstream bug, and I think it was worked around in relenv. So it looks like relenv pull request 173.
Yeah, I linked that in the chat.
Yeah. Was the guy that fixed it. So that has been integrated in the 3007 release, I imagine. Is that accurate?
Yeah, would have been merged forward.
Cool.
Looks like it's also in 3006.7.
It would have gone into 3006.7 and then getting merged forward into 3007.
Awesome. So if anybody who is experiencing that issue wants to give it a go, and just confirm, but it seems like that that big issue has been resolved.
Yeah, I'm busy upgrading to 3006.7 right now, so I can test it.
Work faster, Gary.
Problem is I have so many custom patches and stuff to salt code that every time I upgrade it's very painful because I have to go make sure all the patches get reapplied cleanly. And
Yeah, I have some customers that are in the same boat there.
Do you
Are
have
those-
those submitted as PRs?
I try to upstream as much as I can, but then things like writing tests get in the way, or or making them production ready. So yeah, there's a few things like one of the ones I should really work on getting into 3008 is the some of the enhancements to Jinja, the Jinja renderer, so that you can I think it was L shift or whatever. Um, there's a big one that I really depend on. I can't remember exactly. So, but I'll dig it up. But yeah, yes, there's a few of them that should be up. They should virtually all be upstreamed. It's just a matter of having time to properly polish a PR to make it into the repo, and especially now with the even tighter testing requirements, it makes it even more challenging.
Yeah, we're just trying to stay stable.
Oh yeah, I get why they're there. I just the reality of limited time on my side. I sometimes need to do things quick and dirty to solve a problem.
Speaking of testing, I have a quick question. I remember seeing in Slack, but I don't remember who exactly said it, whether it was Gary or Max maybe, regarding a Docker image that they use for testing. Could somebody link me that? I tried searching in Slack and I couldn't find it.
Wasn't me. I use Vagrant mostly for testing.
Okay.
I seem to recall something. I'll have to see if I can dig it up. Was that Terminal Mage that posted that?
Was it? I couldn't remember exactly, and I tried just searching for Docker up in the bar, and it came up with a lot of stuff. Tried to filter through it, but I wasn't successful.
Yes, I think it's Terminal Mage who maintains a Docker image.
Yeah.
For self-development.
I'll see if I can find the thread afterwards.
We're not pushing a salt Docker image anymore. That kind of got
Right.
dropped.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what the conversation was about, and somebody posted one that they were keeping updated.
But the use case I've seen for the Docker images has been when somebody has an issue that we can't replicate, and they're able to create a Docker image with the exact environment, and then we can go in and test and see the actual issue. But other than that, most of us just do it on a VM, or I test on my local machine with Knox. I'm not.
Yeah, as long as it's not like a destructive test, right? Like I do it on my laptop also, but the Docker image or VM route is great for running all of the tests that might, it might be something that you don't want to run on your laptop.
I prefer. Go ahead.
Well, I said I got some nasty grams from corporate about turning on and turning off auditing when I was running the audit tests.
I tend to prefer VMs because you get systemd, which you can't really rely on with Docker. That being said, now that we're part of Tanzu division, I think some Kubernetes is in our future eventually when things filter down, which will imply Docker, Podman, whatever. So I expect in a year's time we will be getting mandates to support something like that. And Salt can do it. I mean, Garrett demoed it back in 2018 at PyCon in Cleveland. Salt with Kubernetes playing well with each other. It's just the guy who knows all about Kubernetes isn't with us anymore, if you know what I mean.
Way to bring the mood down. No, I'm just kidding.
Obviously I need to leave and go and get another cup of coffee. Get my optimism levels up.
No, it's all good.
Cool. Well, moving right along. We still have agenda item to provide feedback on the great module migration and where different modules are shaking out, whether it be remaining in the core, becoming a core extension, or becoming a community extension. If you haven't reviewed that list, you definitely should. Does anybody have any discussion items that they'd like to bring up regarding module placement and where things look like they're going to be?
I have a quick one, which is that this is a piece that I did take to Broadcom Engineering and Professional Services. I think they also, I can't remember, I think we talked about it in this group, but they also wanted some more clarity from the Core Salt team about how they're making the decision about which one goes into which bucket, just so that they can better help with that categorization. Yeah, that reminds me, Murphy and Shane, I need to send you Rob's comments about ones that he thinks need to go back into core, and just to get your 2 cents on it. But it does depend on the definition of what goes into core in some ways. So yeah.
You said you have a list, Nick, somewhere? Or we're just looking at the ones in the Great Module Migration?
Just the ones in the Great Module Migration.
I'll post that link again. There you go. You can also look at DWAS's pull request, which I think is this one.
Yeah, I guess my main question, right, is how much longer do folks have a chance to weigh in on this before we just sort of call it and say this is the initial hack, right? Like, I think we've discussed in the past that it's possible that things could move around based upon, you know, future requirements and people's desires and things like that. But you know, this initial cut, when are we just going to say, you know, this is good, let's go ahead and move on with this? Does anybody know if DWAS has like an idea in his head, since he sort of owns that PR right now, as to when this will end?
My own feeling is this will end when we ship. I think given the ability that we have to move things around the repos, it's going to be flexible. To actually move the code around, the more harder-ish will be convincing someone that a module needs to go from one place to another and laying out reasons for that. But I think all the way up through ORCs, it should be open to something moving around if there's a sufficient good enough reason that and justification for it getting shifted. I
Sure,
think
but from a community perspective, right, that it's not great to have a moving target like that for so long.
Yes.
If we're talking about, you know, having a 3008 release maybe in the fall, and we're just gonna keep this PR open for months, you know, that doesn't allow us to move forward with trying to ensure that community extensions are in place before the release.
I wasn't thinking of it as this PR so much as somebody making an argument that something should move from community into core.
Yeah, and I think that that argument could be had at any point, right? Like even
Yes.
after 3008. So
Yeah.
I'm not
For
so
this-
much interested in that. I'm more interested
In this
in,
PR,
yeah,
I'm
like when are we
feeling
calling this?
probably within a month, I would bet. As with 3.7 out, we're fixing up some bugs in 3006. I would reckon this is going to be solid by the end of the month. Not speaking for DWAS, but that's my feeling as to dealing with some bug issues. Once those are out of the way, this is going to be. Go ahead.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm thinking about Max's earlier suggestion about, let's have a notification period before code freeze and when things go into, RC mode. I wonder if the same principle applies with such a big PR like this one, that maybe before merging it in, just because this is such a big change, we want to give a small notice period, or something like that before it gets, and that way the community will know, like, last chance to make your final, like, before that gets merged in or something like that. I don't know. What do you think?
I think two
So-
actions off of that would be great. One action being, like putting an announcement out there that just generally says like, hey, here's this PR, or hey, here's the great module migration repository. Go weigh in on that so that the broader community kind of knows what's going on and where they can, make arguments for things to live in certain spots. I think that would be a great announcement to have out there. And then the other action item being, if one of you wonderful core team members would check in with DWAS and see when an actual cut down time for that PR could be
I've
had.
been slacking him as we've been talking here,
And
but he's not in.
I've written it down that I'll bring it up in our stand-up. We have a stand-up at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. So like
so-
if we just had something
Yep.
like dropped in the salt extensions, like, hey, this is going to be March 31st. Cool. Like we know when it is. And then
You got a deadline.
yeah. And then in April, we can just take off running with trying to flesh out as many of the critical community extensions as we can.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Who would be the person to do that announcement? Alyssa, is that something that you could do, or is that something that we would pass it off to Chunga?
I'll take an action item to either do it myself or coordinate with Chunga to do it. I'll run it by him first and then get his 2 cents on who he wants to have do that. It does sound like that we do need a small piece, to know where do we want people to communicate with us about, the arguments they want to make for or against, like moving one to another. Like, do we want that to happen in GitHub discussions or Slack? I think we need to have a happy path for people to give that kind of feedback, and once we know that, then we can set a target date and communicate it out to the community. So
Awesome.
I'll take that piece. Yeah.
Excellent. And then it looks like the last big piece that we have is Max Arnold put out a discussion for centralized documentation. I haven't had a chance to read through this discussion. I did see, Max has made mention of it in previous meetings that we've had here, and then also on Max's salt.tips website, he has the 3007 release notes that are awesome. Go check them out. And there was some talk in there about centralized module documentation. I think it's definitely something that would be super helpful to aggregate all of that information into one place, and then also maybe have pointers to where things live, right? Like if we're aggregating all of the module documentation from, 3 disparate groups and, however many dozens of repositories out there, knowing how to get that thing would be important. But Max, do you want to give a little synopsis on your discussion? And we can also, looks like Alyssa already dropped a link to it. Looks like
I
discussion
hope
66144.
that Derek would be present today because
I am
he is
very
much more
sorry.
familiar.
He got COVID and couldn't make it.
Okay.
So he's
Okay.
very, very ill. If you want, we could defer it for 2 weeks. He'll probably be better by then. Fingers crossed. So
Yeah, I think it will require some expertise on the Sphinx documentation building process.
yeah, I apologize. He just got terribly ill. So
My main concerns are security issues because it will require pulling some code and building some documentation from third-party repositories and publishing them under a soulproject.io domain. And how to solve that in a secure fashion, whether it be through some review process or it can be done safely in terms of some automation. It's a big question.
do we want to wait till we can have Derek here for that discussion? Or are there some things we can hash
have
out?
no objections, if you guys have no objections, I will suggest to postpone it.
Okay. I'm okay with that. What do you think, Nick?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
So we'll plan on discussing that further on the 21st. That should give plenty of time for Derek to feel better. And I think that sort of brings us to the end of our agenda items. Does anybody have anything further that they'd like to discuss?
I was thinking about the testing, how the automation and testing for community extensions. And what I was hoping is that when the core team get the core extensions moving with automation, GitHub, and tests, that could prove as an example for the community extensions, GitHub Actions, etc., so that stuff gets tested and validated, because it's kind of like each community extension is going to be somewhat a law unto themselves, that it's adequately tested.
So I would
built and
say
stuff.
that the opposite might be true.
Okay.
Where you could maybe take what we're doing and take a look at it and see if it fits the bill for what you would like to do.
Okay.
Essentially, I created a central artifacts repository, which has all of the GitHub actions, and they're all called as remote tasks from within the community extensions themselves. So they're all running a centralized list instead of duplicating those YAML files. They're just calling them from the central artifacts repository. So it's not a scenario where each one is sort of doing it a different way. We have consolidated on one set at this point.
Well, my aim is to get well-tested extensions and take a look at what you have. Given that Hedgerow is probably going to be doing some of the automation work around it, I am sure he will modify or have suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the core stuff. But yeah, that's good. The whole aim is to have a consistent set of ways things get unit tested and stuff, and that sounds better.
Yep.
Does the common GitHub automation workflow have scheduled tests, like nightly tests against the Salt master branch?
Yes, they do nightly builds across.
No, I mean the extension on the extension side.
I don't know.
So like to ensure that every extension is tested nightly against the current main branch of salt repository.
I'm not sure how that will operate, if they will do that or not, because at the moment we're going through, how should I put it, a reduction in cost exercise, where we're minimizing the cost to do all of our automation and stuff. So I can see some people arguing that why would we be doing that and costing us money, etc., when that should be the extension people doing that, etc. But I think it's a good idea to, I don't know, have to have a talk with the SRE team, etc., about.
No,
do
this
that.
is about the extension side.
From
The test will be running in the extension organization. The question is that like a nightly test against the salt main branch.
From an extension perspective, the extension shouldn't care about what's going on in salt unless the interfaces are changed. And I can't imagine that they're going to be that fluid. So I guess it's really like a risk reward type of scenario, right? Like how important is it to have nightly tests against the framework? You know, are there like how often would scenarios happen where an extension is broken by changes in the salt framework around it?
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Every time we do a release, somebody pops up. We broke something.
I've seen a couple of successful examples of early failure detection within salt formulas community. They have extension set of tests, and they test against all the supported salt versions and also against the master branch. And they detected some early failures before it was too late and the bugs were out in some salt release.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe that the same principle can be applied to extensions if they can break because of salt incompatibility.
I've seen some stuff that was caught by the formulas testing, specifically having to do with like ginger rendering and stuff like that. So I guess we would have to identify which things are most likely to cause an extension to break. I feel like most execution modules will just like work, right? You know, but there could be changes in state modules or renderer modules or something like that.
Utils.
I'm sorry?
Utils as well.
Yeah. Reliance on utilities in salt core in an extension are probably going to be shaky, right? So I'm not sure what to do about that.
No, in principle, I think it's a good idea. It's just a question of costs, where it gets done, how frequently. But
well, if we're using GitHub runners, it shouldn't increase our cost if it's us running them.
And if it's in the community, it's just going to be throttled, right?
Yeah.
Like if we hit a maximum number of minutes, it'll just stop working.
Yep.
You probably do it once a week.
Is the response, help me to understand one thing, like is the responsibility on the individual extension maintainers in their own repo to like call out to this kind of like, I apologize, I don't know a ton about testing and how it works under the hood, but like, so let's say you've got like Max who has his repos with his extensions that he's maintaining. Does he like call out into the suite you were talking about, Nick, somehow? Like, does he like incorporate that into his testing suite on his repos? I'm just curious how it works. And the reason why I'm asking is because how do we then like show that an extension is meeting our testing requirements? How do we say you're validated, like you're a good extension because you're meeting our testing requirements? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me see if I can share and we can sort of talk through this. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen. Here in the Salt Extensions community, this is where we're trying to push everybody who has an extension, and we're trying to facilitate any issues that somebody might have in order to sort of like move out of their disparate locations into this one GitHub org. That said, feel free to release extensions wherever you want. We're not trying to be authoritarian about this, but trying to be helpful in people being able to find extensions in the near term until we have this documentation issue worked out, where we can consolidate everything together. So you should be able to come here and find community extensions fairly easily. So let's say we have a new extension that comes out. It's this Prometheus extension. There is a copier template that was put out by community member Jean-Luc, and it will drop these YAML files in your GitHub Workflows directory when you create a new extension using that utility. So on PR, we call a central workflow from the central artifacts repository, and you can pass different flags to it. Like, not sure why setup vault is set true for this one, but I'll look at that later. But you can pass different flags to it, and basically turn things on and off in the centralized workflow that way. And then we have a release workflow on tag, so that when we go ahead and say, okay, we're ready for a release, we're going to go ahead and set a tag. It publishes to PyPy and creates a GitHub release and all of that wonderful stuff. And so there's very small amounts of YAML that are required in the actual extension itself in order to call those things. And then if we go to central artifacts, this is where all of the logic lives. And these were largely pulled from, I think, Salt Describe. So, this should be more or less like core team actions that they care about. They've probably been tweaked to some degree so that they were working a little bit better for us and our needs in the community. But like, here's the CI workflow that we're calling when a PR comes in. We have some inputs that we're exposing, and then all of the jobs associated with it, right? So like building the docs, running pre-commit, running testing, and all of that stuff is all handled here. Or in you can see that a lot of these are calling other YAML files. Like, this is the overall CI workflow, but it's offloading into this pre-commit action here. So if you wanted to make a change, like something in pre-commit needed another system dependency or something like that, it could be added and merged into this, and then it will apply to every single extension. So that's kind of how we're doing things now. Does that clear up things a little bit?
That does. I have a couple questions. One is, do you need help documenting this? Is it documented?
It is not well documented. So yeah, having a proper README here that sort of lays things out, adding documentation on how to interface with this would be great.
Yeah, that sounds
I
good.
don't see a lot of Windows stuff in there either. Seem very Linux centric.
Good.
I think there's a hint there for you to
I get that
contribute
a lot.
Windows.
Yeah, you want to bring it to the Windows working group, maybe?
Man, I so do.
Actually, since it's Shane that's talking, what about Mac? Will everything there work for the Mac as well?
So I'm trying to find it. I think in the matrix, where is it? The jobs, Linux, Windows. So we do run Windows tests. And there should be Mac
Yeah,
OS.
there's Mac OS.
Yeah. So we do run those. But it's nested down in this test action stuff.
I just noticed the 3005, that's end of life. So could probably get rid of those. But I guess certain people would have what desire to support that.
Another question I have it. So I remember we had a conversation like at the kickoff meeting between you and Max. Like so Max, like I know your company is currently maintaining a couple of extensions. I can't remember what was the relationship between the ones that you're maintaining going to be with this repo if you want to were you planning to like mirror them? I can't remember what you were planning to do with that.
It was probably Christopher who discussed this. I probably missed that part.
I believe
we are hosting our extensions on GitLab.
Yeah.
They have GitLab specific pipelines, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And
I think
it will require some effort to move them to GitHub if we decide to do so.
I think the consensus in talking with Christopher was that we could create a stub repository that points at any that you want discoverable here, right? So that we could just type in here, oh, you know, which one are we looking for? Oh, Azure, and then we go to it, and all it really is like a README file that points to GitLab, like, hey, you know, here's where the code is.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah, because part of what I'm thinking is I really like what you've been showing, Nick, and I wonder if there's just a way to, like, if we want to try to sweeten the deal to get more people to show them that this is a happy path, so like host your extension here in this org with us, you know, because it'll have so many advantages for you. Like, there's a testing suite that you can hook into really easily. Documentation is easier on this site. You know, you can show that you're blessed or validated by hosting here in this org or something that, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be nice to just be able to sweeten the deal to encourage people or push them to use this where possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I've been striving for, right? But like I only have so many cycles to be able to do all the things that would really be required, right? So if anybody has great ideas from the community, definitely would love to delegate some of this work. You know, I threw this README out here as sort of a welcome into the Salt Extensions org. You know, trying to work with folks who have their own repositories and pull those in. But if anybody has great ideas on how to do things better, definitely open to those.
Well, this is where I would like to hear from like Gary or Melissa or somebody like or Trilogy, like those of you who are interested in becoming a maintainer of an extension, or maybe you already do. What would make this the happy path for you? What could we do to make it so that this reduces some of the headaches you're experiencing or things like that?
I can certainly offer my view. So the short answer for me is I have not yet made the decision whether I would move my stuff off of GitLab. I'm not a huge fan of GitHub. That being said, you know, some of the because one of the challenges I've had, of course, is that all of the initial test suites were designed around GitHub Actions, and so I was able to, you know, replicate some of that on GitLab. But not all of it. So I mean, that is something that's why I haven't completely ruled out the idea of moving my stuff to GitHub. But yeah, I mean, like all the stuff that Nick has been working on in terms of centralizing the testing certainly does make it appealing, because then you end up, with less drift and less concerns, because the original problem with salt extensions, basically once you cut the extension, it was very hard to keep things in sync, right? As testing requirements, because it was basically a point in time snapshot of the test at that time, and then you would have to constantly backport tests or whatnot as things changed. So the short answer is I don't have a great answer for you. I'm not a big fan of GitHub, so I was very much tempted to just keep my stuff in GitLab, and either I know we had originally talked about an awesome list or stub repositories or possibly both, and just link my stuff that way. But as progress is made in terms of, I mean, there's no argument that the salt extensions, org does help with things like discoverability, which, given that the extensions, the index has essentially, been abandoned. I don't know. I don't have a great answer for you yet. But yes,
So
I
I
mean,
like,
the centralized testing is certainly appealing.
Go ahead, Melissa.
yeah, I agree with Gary about well, about some stuff. I really appreciate the work that Nick has done to get everything into the centralized repository. I myself don't have a lot of experience with the GitHub actions. My team at work uses Azure DevOps pipelines, so it would take some translation there, but I feel like it's heading in a good direction overall.
Good stuff. Anything from you, Trilogy, by the way? No worries if you don't. I also get that you sometimes don't have your mic working. So no worries.
So how does someone get their extension on salt extensions? Like, do you just request and then you approve and make them a owner of that repo? Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah, to date, it's really been, we have the project Kanban board out there that Gareth put all those issues in for. And some folks went and commented on those and said like, oh, hey, I started this extension. I'd love to move it over. And so, yeah, I create the repository for them in this org and make them a maintainer so that they can push this stuff over and then sort of help facilitate moving into the framework that we've established through the copier templates and things like that, in order to get all of the things that should be the same across all of them. So it's not necessarily like a scalable type of setup. We should probably have some sort of like onboarding documentation that would allow people to do that a little bit more streamlined. But yeah, today it was more like people commenting on issues or saying something in the Salt Extension Slack channel. We do have discussions enabled for this org, so maybe discussions is the right path. Like, hey, if you want to do this, drop a discussion in, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, because they can't really create an issue in the Salt Extensions org, so it would have to be a discussion.
Yep.
There is one. Is there any CLA currently for the Salt Extensions org that contributors have to sign?
No, not currently.
Yeah, I should mention one of not like, so while I'm supportive of having a, that things are licensed under the Apache license for stuff in Salt Extensions org, I'm not necessarily sure that's the right path for me, because I've been actually toying with the idea of maybe MPL or even AGPL for my stuff. So I'm not saying take that into consideration, because I think it's actually a good idea to have a common license in the Salt Extensions org. I'm just saying that may be one reason why I don't move my stuff into it, for whatever that is worth.
I mean, I think there's always going to be outliers, right? But I think that this should probably be the common path more often than not. And if somebody feels like it's not the right fit for them, it's open source. Do what you will. However, if you do go down the AGPL path, Gary, I'm going to disown you and ban you from all further discussions on this working group.
Not a fan of the ATPL. I was actually, that's why I was originally toying with ATPL, and then I thought MPL might be a better compromise. Than, you can still mix it with salt code, but not, and it's all file based. But then, the actual extensions source code has to get pushed back. So that's, I haven't done it. My stuff is currently under the Apache license. It's just, I have been toying with that idea. I, again, haven't made a decision yet.
Well, cool.
If we do decide to allow different licenses, I think each repo should have a badge or something that makes it clear what licenses each one has.
Yeah, like, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting we change away. I'm actually supportive of that, certainly at least initially, just because if it makes it easier if the Salt team actually wants to take in an extension and the extension maintainer is agreeable to it, then there's no issue with code. Presumably, they would just have to sign the CLA, and then it could be pulled into either the core extensions or into Salt core code. So I think certainly as things are getting off the ground, I think it makes sense to just have a mandate that everything must be under the Apache license. I'm just explaining the reasons why someone might not want to be in the Salt Extensions org because of that.
Cool. Well, we have 3 minutes left. Do we have any other things that we'd like to bring up?
Good discussion, everyone.
I feel like when we end anything and Shane's here, we need a joke, but I'm not going to force him to do it. It's just like that just needs to be the thing.
I gotta find that one I had yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was funny. I thought it was funny. I shared it with my family. That's how funny it was. Oh, I hope it's appropriate.
If you're not sure, maybe don't.
Slack it to Alyssa first for approval.
We can always turn the recording off for the joke.
Let me stop the recording and then you can tell the joke.
Yeah, stop the recording.
Orange.